The story of Ruth in the Bible is an immigrant story that, although very ancient, instructs us in the same way that it instructed the Hebrews who were in the midst of rebuilding their nation. It instructs about the abundant grace and generosity of God. This scripture is an example of the Bible's ability to allow us to see beyond conventional religious views, to glimpse anew the providential love of God. The story continues to inform us even today. Hello, my name is John Glaser, and I'm a minister with the Community of Christ, working with Latino populations in the United States. By its very nature, this ministry takes me into the immigrant community, which is why, of course, the book of Ruth has become one of my favorite books in the Hebrew Scriptures. For you see, the main actors in the book of Ruth are immigrants. It is a story of a family that migrates from Bethlehem to the land of Moab, and then from Moab back to Bethlehem. We can only understand their travails when we compare their struggle with the travails of immigrants living in our own midst. We compare the ancient and contemporary narratives much in the same way that the people of Nehemiah did. The story had such an impact on the rebuilding of their society that they preserved the book of Ruth in the canon for future generations. Now, let's explore a little bit about this wonderful narrative. Now, according to the narrative in the book of Ruth, the only surviving members of this immigrant family are the matriarch Naomi and her alien daughter-in-law Ruth, who is from the maligned foreign land of Moab. These two women, they're poor, they're dispossessed, and they have to live on the margins of their society. Ruth has to work in the fields to gather food for herself and her mother-in-law. Ruth especially finds it difficult to live in Bethlehem, for she is the despised outsider and has little hope of being a part of the Bethlehem community. For you see, the law of Deuteronomy specifies that Moabites will not be allowed into the Lord's congregation, not even unto their 10th generation. So Ruth becomes the illegal alien of her day. She's despised and living in fear of banishment. She becomes the migrant farm worker of her day. According to the story, it was grain harvesting time in Bethlehem, and she was picking up the leftovers of what the workers had left behind. For you see, the custom among the righteous, as again instructed in Deuteronomy, was to leave sheaves of grain standing in the field. They were left for the orphans, for the widows, and foreigners, which of course Ruth fit all three categories. Now, the land that Ruth happened to be working that day was owned by Boaz. Boaz took an immediate liking to Ruth. He noticed her hard work. He noticed the way in which she took care of her mother-in-law and the way that she observed local customs. Well, we all know the rest of the story. They fall in love, they get married, they prosper, and they have a child by the name of Obed. Today, we see the name of Obed and his mother Ruth included in the lineage of Christ. Yep, there we find their names on the very first page of the New Testament. Indeed, it is a long journey for an unwanted, rejected, immigrant alien to become an elect lady of Bethlehem. It is by the generosity of people like Boaz, who, having received the first fruits of their harvest, will make it possible for the orphans, the widows, and immigrants to take their place in the community and participate in the harvest. The grace and generosity of God is given to us as we tarry to restore God's kingdom. May God bless us as we harvest the sheaves that God has placed in front of us.